Welcome back, everybody. Obviously, I'm in the woods today. I was going to set up the podcast studio just in the normal area of the house, but I was like, you know what? Let's try to go outside and, see what happens. But today's topic is about decisions and how to make important decisions in your life. I'm 18 years old and I've made more decisions than what you would think. So these are what has helped me. These are the big decisions I think will come up in your life, and these are things I'm currently preparing for. So first off, let's start off with the decision that I've made recently. So obviously I have the business. I have recently purchased a work truck for my business to be able to tow bigger loads with my trailer, as well as if I wanted to expand into maybe tree services or something like that in the future. Then I have a truck now that can carry that stuff and haul that stuff, and it's strong enough. It's a big V8 F-150. So that was kind of a hard decision for me, because it was either get the truck, put a down payment on a duplex, or put that money into the stock market. And there's no terribly wrong decision. There's just more of a risky decision, as well as your return on your investment. Obviously, hopefully, the more risky, the better the investment, right? Better the return, I should say, not better the investment. So the more risk you take, hopefully you get a better return on that investment. So let's say if I were to get the duplex, I'd have enough money to put a down payment on it. And then you risk, first of all, me applying for a loan would be near to impossible, because I'm 18. I've only been in legal business for about 2 years, and this is my second year. So I'd have to finish taxes early to get approved. And then interest rates are insane right now. And so it would not be a cash flowing property right now. There was a time where I could have gotten a duplex and I would have made a lot of money on it, but I chose to spend it on creating a business, which in reality the business has made me more money than what the duplex could have. So those are hard decisions you have to make in your life, whether you want to invest into the stock market, dump your money into real estate, or dump your money back into your business. Now we're going to talk about decisions that you're going to have to make in your life. Number one decision: are you going to wake up for high school? Are you going to go to school? Are you going to do sports? That's a decision high schoolers have to make. And that's a decision that can greatly impact your future. I would say people that do sports are oftentimes more ambitious. Oftentimes they are hardworking, but 99.9% of the time, they don't make it past high school. They maybe go to college for that sport, and then they're done. So I was in sports. I was pretty decent, but not the best on the team. And so I knew if I were to stick with it, there was no chance of me going to any big colleges that are worth going to. On top of, I don't like college at all for what my personality traits are. And then on top of that, going to the professional leagues of that sport to actually make money is near to impossible. So realistically for me, I was like, I'm going to crush it in sports. I was working out twice a day. I was eating an absurd amount of protein, getting big and strong, hitting maxes every other week. But then I sat back and I was like, you know what? The only thing I really want is just money. The tool of money to be able to buy whatever I wanted. And sports wasn't cutting it for me. I knew I wasn't going to make it to the professional league. So that was a decision I had to make. That's a decision you will have to make in your life, is if you want to do hobbies or sports, or if you want to focus more on a career. And there's good to both sides. Maybe you don't care about money at all. You could just be a normal employee and work until you die, and you could be totally satisfied with that. For me, that's not the route that I wanted to go. The next decision you make is whenever you graduate high school, do you go on a religious church mission or do you go to college? For me, I chose a religious church mission. For most kids, that may not even be an option or they don't care for it, but I want to help people further understand my church, and that's a longer story for another podcast, but I've had many blessings in my life that I think that I know is a direct correlation from God and His blessings towards me. So I feel the need to serve a 2-year mission, and that's what I'm going to do. In 2 months, I will be gone, wiped off the face of the earth in Springfield, right? So I'm going to be going serving my mission in Utah, which is 2,000 miles away, and I will be teaching people I've never known before about a religion that they've heard many times. So that's going to be my challenge for the next 2 years, starting in 2 months. So that was my decision. The other decision is go to college. Now, for me, that was a terrible decision. And so I've actually already done college. I've done 2.5 years worth of college, which is only equal to 1 year. So I've not gotten my associates. So if I went to another year of college, then I guess I would have an associate's. But I don't feel a need for that. I would rather be an entrepreneur and get connections through that. I would rather be an entrepreneur and grow a business, I don't like to work for people. I like to kind of call my own shots. And I understand at a certain point in the other degrees, you can kind of call shots, but at the end of the day, you still have a boss that you report to. But me, the only person I report to is myself. And if I don't wake up that day on time, then it's my fault. And I kind of like that a bit better. I like the fact that at 12 o'clock, middle of the day, I can just go help anybody in my family with what they need. I can go visit my grandma. I can go do this. I can go shopping. And it's because I choose my own hours. I can work for a week straight and then take a month off. And that week could pay for that month if I worked hard enough. And that's kind of the way that I choose to live my life. So I chose a mission over college. And then secondary after the mission, I will be continuing business as far as I know now. So that was an important decision I had to make. Now you need to make a decision for yourself for those type of things. How to do that? 1, understand your personality. Understand what you are good at. Right? Because if you are not very good at school, then maybe you should not be going to school and wasting your time and going into financial debt and being older whenever you go to pay off that debt. Right? Instead, for me, it was easier to just become an entrepreneur, suffer for a couple years, and even in the suffering, you still get paid, just not a lot. And then after a couple hard years of discovering your industry and getting better at communicating with customers, understanding how advertising works, understanding your product and actually being good at your product and service, then is when you start to make pretty good money for your business, and that's whenever it starts to become worth it. For you got to understand your personality, you got to understand your character traits, and understand your work ethic, right? If you're not willing to work super hard for yourself, if you are a person that doesn't really stick by your goals that you set each year, if you're chasing your goals but you fall short, that's much better than not even chasing it at all, right? So if my goal was to have a 6-pack by 2024, and I worked all year to do that, and you slowly started to see abs popping through, but they weren't good, but you could see them a little bit in the perfect lighting, I would consider that a win, well over the fact of me not trying at all, right? If a week into it, I quit and I'm not motivated, then you're probably the type of person that would not succeed in business, because you have to hold yourself accountable, and every single second of every single day you're thinking of the business. I'll be sitting there eating lunch and I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. What if I did that? Let me try that. And then the very next week or the very next day, I implement it and I see if it works or not. Maybe it's like, ooh, I just heard about Google's local service ad. You can be Google verified. So then you go in, fill out the application, it takes about 2 weeks, and then boom, you're Google guaranteed, and you have a ton of business coming in. So you're always thinking about your business. You're never just resting and relaxing and watching a movie. While you're watching a movie, someone may say something that has nothing to do with business, yet you directly correlate that with business, and you're like, what they just said was really stupid, but I could actually reverse engineer that into being a good idea for my business. So it's you don't have a capped income. The harder you work, the smarter you work, the more money you make. And so that's where you're always thinking of business. Rather than if you're an employee, you take on responsibilities. After each year, you may ask your boss for a raise depending on how many responsibilities you added to your plate. And you can talk to your boss and say, look, you hired me to do this task. Now I'm kind of doing all these different things, but I'm still getting paid the same. I think I should be paid more fair wage for these type of things because of the responsibility I'm bringing to the team. If this isn't something you're willing to meet, then I'm going to have to find somebody else that pays me a more fair wage per responsibilities I take on. And really, that's the only time that you make money or get a bonus in your work, is a yearly checkup with your boss to see any responsibilities you added to your plate and how you can further help the company grow. But if you're in a low wage job, then you're working all day, every day, doing the same things, and your income's not really going to change. Maybe $1 an hour every year. It will go up a tad. But even then, it's just not even really worth it for me. So if that's something I had to do, absolutely. I'm willing to make money in any way, shape, or form, but I'm not willing to do that if I have other bigger opportunities. So there's that. That kind of segued into the very next thing after college is what job you want to do. If you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be an employee, if you want to be self-employed where you're doing the stock market stuff, or you're in real estate, or the worst of them all, crypto, those are options you could do. So then you just kind of have to decide, and the easiest way to make a decision is to not make a decision when you're at a low moment in life. Do not make important decisions in desperate times, because if you make a decision when you're desperate, it's almost immediately that you're going to become poor from that decision, because when you're desperate, you make pretty stupid decisions. I would know. I've done a lot of dumb things where it was like, man, probably shouldn't have spent my money on that. I should have probably spent my money in this thing. And my life now would probably be a tad bit easier. So again, do not make a decision when you're desperate, and figure out, all right, I want to be an employee. So then you do have to go the route of college if you want to have an employee job that's willing to pay, and then you do this and that and this and that, and then 10 years later down the road, you'll pay off your college, but then you'll be happy with the decision you made. And so if that's the route you want to go, then that's the route you want to go. Now let's talk about one of the next important decisions you're going to have to make in your life. And that is to be married, or to be married and have a family, or to be single. I'm a religious person, come from a religious Christian background, so I think everybody should be married to the opposite gender, and I think that they should have a kid, and I think that they should raise a family, because at the end of the day, that is the only thing in life that genuinely matters. So let's take away houses, let's take away businesses, restaurants, Walmart, anything. Take it away. We're just humans in the woods. That's kind of why I'm filming in the woods today. If you are a human in the woods, there is really only a couple things that matter. Survival, which is food, shelter, and water. And then to have a family so that humans can continue to live. There's a reason humans have a sex drive. That is so that we have the need and want to reproduce. If humans had a choice to reproduce, we would not be horny. We would just be humans chilling, doing absolutely nothing. But because men have testosterone and women have estrogen, there is hormones that want us to connect so that we can reproduce, because that is the only flipping meaning to life. And so I think you should be married to the opposite gender and have a family and reproduce, because that actually is the only real thing that matters in life. Careers don't matter as much as reproduction. Egos don't matter as much as reproduction. Houses, restaurants, all these luxuries that we have, chairs, clothes, everything has been inventions so that we can have an easier life. But do not let all these things, governments, cities, civilizations, do not allow all these things to make you forget the only actual meaning of humans living on a planet. Because humans are a species. We are a type of animal. And our only job that genuinely matters is to survive and reproduce. If nobody in the entire world survived or reproduced, you, the person watching this podcast, would not be, alive. So drop the ego, drop the nonsense, stop with the bull crap. The only thing that matters is to reproduce. And if that's not something you are able to do due to science, then that is a completely different topic. But the important thing is that you try legally and weddingly, be married to somebody and then try, right? But after many hours of me thinking about this topic, I guess that's the only thing that matters, isn't it? If you could argue with me and you were right here in front of me, act like you're arguing with me. In your head or out loud, say the sentence you want to say that combats my statement that the only thing that matters is to survive and to reproduce. Say your sentence. Go ahead. Hopefully you have said your sentence. Now here is my combating argument. Without those two things, your ancestors surviving and your parents or whoever had you, if they didn't have you, you would not be alive. You would not be able to eat. You would not be able to breathe. You would not be able to bring happiness to people. You would not be able to help your community. You would not be able to have a career or a job. So I would assume you are very important to yourself. I would assume you are your most important thing in your life. I would hope you are your most important thing in your life, because you are you. If you didn't exist, it's because your parents didn't reproduce or your parents didn't survive, whether it was natural causes or whether they got eaten by a saber-toothed tiger or whether they had, health problems and died, whatever. The only things that matter is to survive and to reproduce. And so that's like here. And then about 3 miles underneath here is where you can have your worldly things, where we pretend we're a society. We pretend like our government is in charge. We pretend like everybody that has jobs, they dress up as their person and they just pretend to be that person, and they have their responsibilities in their career to help society grow. All that is good and dandy, being an employee, being an entrepreneur, building a business that helps people, being in the business and helping people, employee, entrepreneur, right? All those things are great. All those things are things we have to do to survive these days, because we have to have food, and there's a good chance you don't know how to hunt properly enough to where you could survive solely off of hunting, right? Eventually you would run out of arrows, eventually you would run out of ammo, then you have to go buy more arrows or make ammo, but then you'd have to have a machinery that could make the ammo or the arrow. So unless you are a Native American that has hunted your entire life and you could genuinely live by yourself in the woods, then you probably need money to go to the store and to buy things to make sure your body continues to function. So that would also be important. But don't forget that the main thing is to reproduce. So that little rant is over. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We have to reproduce to survive. And so that is your decision. Okay, going back to the original question, after having a solid career, the next choice is, do I want to get married and do I want to have a family? I hope I helped influence your choice there. Let's say you made the ethical, smart decision. You end up having a family. The next choice is, do I want to stick with my job? Do I think the income's high enough? Or do I want to move on to a next career that could possibly pay higher? And then that's another decision you would have to make. Do I want to stick with the career I have? Or do I want to go back to school, learn a trade, learn a career, and then do that? And then hopefully by the time you're older, you're making enough money to support you, your wife, your family. Okay, now fast forward from there. That's kind of the decision you have to continue to make. All the other decisions are fairly easy, smaller decisions. Should we buy this new car or should we buy a used car? Right? So besides those small decisions in your life, the next big decision is, how do I teach my kids? How do I teach my kids to be good humans so that they reproduce? Because after they reproduce, you would be a grandparent. And so now we're looking at the end of your lifetime. If you've done what was necessary, which is survived and reproduced, then you would end up eventually being a grandparent. Now that you're a grandparent, you have a lot little of decisions. At this point, 70 years old, your mind has been made up. You've seen every single opinion, and you've made your mind on politics. You've made your mind on whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee. You've made your mind on if you like the country or not, whatever. All these big decisions humans have to face. At this point, 70 years old, congratulations you. 70-year-old you. You're chilling. At this point, your mind is fairly made up, right? You know what your opinions are, and you're able to usually argue about those opinions with people, okay? So there's that. Now you die, and then your kids have to make the same decisions you made, and then those kids, and those kids, and those kids, and those kids. Obviously, every single topic that I got into today, in about the 30 minutes I've been filming, I was able to talk about someone's entire life. So obviously, within each of those decisions, there's a bigger tree to develop. There is a harder decision within that decision to make. There are things that can conflict you from having a family. There are things that can make you make the wrong decisions sometimes. And so, as a human, I understand in this podcast I was not perfect at explaining every single detail, because physically it's impossible to explain somebody's life in about 30 minutes. And so this is a huge oversumption, overlap, and this is just one big explanation on what I think the biggest decisions you'll have to make in your life are. Okay? These are the biggest decisions you have to make in your life and give back to your community. Hope this podcast helped a lot. Hopefully you kind of like the new setting. We are in the woods today. So you guys have a good one.